Hello, welcome back to Outbuilding. Today I'm going to spend a little bit of time and talk about this Jeep, which has been awesome and has been like just kind of a key component. If you look back at all the videos that I've done so far, I'm constantly moving materials, and when you're building things, you need to move things, get equipment, do other things, transport stuff. And the Jeep, along with some trailers, have been just immeasurably useful. So the Jeep's been awesome, but and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that the specifications for what it can do aren't going to match what we have coming ahead of us. And so we did some research, looked around at different choices. I'll go through those choices and show you why we concluded that we will get a Mercedes Sprinter. And so we're going to take that Sprinter and use it both as a utility vehicle and then possibly as a camper down the road. But in this episode, I'll talk about what worked really well with the Jeep and what we hope to be able to do with the Sprinter. So this channel, Outbuilding Info, is centered around the process of building things. And I've got different playlists for different things, and it's pretty varied. If you have specific interests, you might watch one of those playlists, or you might be interested in building in general and therefore watch all of them. So you might ask yourself, why am I doing a video about vehicles? So often this Jeep has played a huge part in what we've been doing. Most, like I said, getting materials, bringing things to and from, getting us to where we're going to do the projects. And a lot of what we're doing is a coastal project that is about an hour and 20 minutes from where I'm sitting. And we need to go out there. It's pretty remote, and so we have to bring all the tools we have with us, and we also are not always out there, so we bring all the tools back when we're gone. We'll be building a cabin there that's a little bit more substantial and that we can keep things there. But in the intervening time, we're going to actually tear down the cabin. So we need a place to stay, we need to bring our equipment back and forth, and we need most of the materials to be shuttled back and forth for the actual build. So the Jeep has been really good, but I need to change to something else that can accommodate some of our other needs. So that's why I'm putting this video in with this. And it's also the start, essentially, of a build series on the van. And the van's going to be a really slow build. We have many, many projects in front of it. So we're only going to do what we need to get the utility out of it. We need it first. But we'll use that time to sort of get used to it. We'll kind of squat in it and camp in it when we can, and then learn how to better work on a build. So you'll see those build videos for the van trickle in as we get more, and that'll be a playlist that's separate. So hopefully down the road you'll be able to look at this video as the start of that van playlist. So what's been good about the Jeep so far? We have about 50,000 miles on it, a little over 50,000 miles, and about 5 years of driving it. And I don't drive it really during the week at all. And in fact, I made it all the way through my career, mostly biking and walking to work. So it's not a daily commuter. It's something that we use on weekends to travel or to haul things. And so it's really truly a utility vehicle for us. And so we've rigged it up we put in airbags on the back because it's got a pretty soft suspension, so it's not really geared towards having really large cargo. So those airbags let you lift it up a little bit. That was a pretty inexpensive modification. It's pretty easy to do, and you just charge it you can even use a bicycle pump. So that really helped with that. We also put in a full tow package. It came with the tow wiring, but we added in a brake controller and everything. So we can haul, and this has a limit of about 3,500 pounds. And our trailer, we actually kind of specifically bought an aluminum trailer that was lighter. It weighs 600-700 pounds itself. And so that gives us about a 2,700 pound payload capacity for hauling. And that's not bad. That's almost a load of gravel. That's 1 yard of gravel. That's our tractor, if you strip everything off of it, including the front loader, but barely. And so it's kind of right at the marginal edge of what you would haul with a Jeep. And a Jeep's not a tow vehicle. It's not really built for that. Better tow vehicles are longer wheelbase things, rear wheel drive. So pickups are great for towing, and capacities are huge. Electric trucks are massive in terms of towing capacity. So this is not a tow vehicle, but we've been towing quite a bit with it. So for the lightweight things that we do, it's worked well. We also built a camper in the back, so it seats 5, kind of crowded. So if we're around town and just need to shuttle people, 5 fit. It's mostly just the 2 of us, occasionally a third. And so we can fold down the back seats and put in the platform that I built. And I did a video on that. I'll put a link to it here. It's kind of neat. And that's been really, really fun to use. That's a kitchen in the back and a camping setup. So it's kind of like sleeping in a tent. The kitchen is sort of like having a teardrop trailer in the back. And that's something we can put in and out really easily. And we kept the camping gear in there almost all the time, because not all of our sleeping bags and stuff, but just the kitchen set, because occasionally I'd just be out at a track meet or something I was doing for work, and I could just pull that out and use it. So that was really useful to have. That was great. Other than that, Jeeps they're not known for being like highway cars. It blows around a little bit, and it's a little bit wandery. that never really bothered me in this Jeep, because once I got used to it, I didn't even think of it, and now I find it really comfortable to drive. So I got really used to that, but that was something that we did. We did change out the tires and wheels and add a little bit of ground clearance to it, but we don't go massively four-wheeling. We just simply do a lot of dirt roads, gravel roads, and then at our property, we use it in a utility way. So the Jeep's been really good for that. I think the limitations that we ran into with the Jeep are primarily the towing capacity, and then we can camp in it, but when we camp in it, we don't really have much space for anything else. So that's, we can set it up so that we can camp for an overnight. But if we're bringing a bunch of equipment with us or something and need to sleep, or if we were going to spend days and days and days in it, you're pretty much standing outside and sleeping in it. And that's fine on a summer day when you're on a trip and doing an overnight. It's not so good if we're trying to stay out there and stay at the coast in rough weather. So we started looking at alternatives for the Jeep and asked ourselves, how do we improve the towing capacity? How do we have a place that we can camp or even stay for a week and feel fairly comfortable? And then how do we kind of incorporate that into what we've got, which we've got a pretty small area here. So a full-size pickup is actually really tough to negotiate in our backyard here, and this is kind of where we keep things and where we come and go from. So it needs to be fairly small, be fairly agile. Four-wheel drive is pretty important. We have family in the mountain states, and so when we travel at the wintertime to see them for holidays or something like that, we want that reliability. And then we also just literally at the little portion of the driveway into our cabin is going across a neighbor's yard. And if we had a rear wheel drive pickup, we would chew it up in a heartbeat when there's no load in it. And so we really wanted to be considerate of them when we go across their area on our easement. And so an all-wheel drive or a four-wheel drive vehicle does that really well. So that was some of our criteria for what the limitations are with the Jeep and also what was good about the Jeep. So now I'll tell you a little bit about what we considered in terms of our choices to replace it. So we do use these two aluminum trailers. There's one out at the coast and one here. They've got sidewalls. Again, I'll put videos to links we did for those because those were actually incredibly useful and more so than I think we even expected. And so we thought for a minute, well, we can get another trailer. We can get a cargo trailer and build it up. And so a cargo trailer of decent quality and sort of fairly new is about $14,000. And then you'd need to put in, that's just a bare box. And so then you need to put in some sort of bed system, some sort of, if you're gonna do any sort of power so that you have like lighting and or a gas heater, then you need a gas supply and a separate tank, and you need the electrical, like so batteries, solar panels, other things. So you're talking about probably $5,000 to $6,000 of equipment to put in and really get it rigged up, and that's with sort of a portable fridge. That's like a little mini RV and a cargo trailer. That's still pretty utilitarian. It's mostly a box and you can sleep in it. We've got a friend that stays at our cabin occasionally out at the coast and uses that. He's a nurse and he spends his weekends out there or weekdays out there if he's working occasionally. And that works well for him. They can pull a side-by-side in there and haul it when they go hunting and do some other stuff. So that was one choice we looked at. The big drawback there is the Jeep isn't big enough to tow it, and so we would need to not only get a $14,000 trailer and the sort of upgrades to build it, but we need to go buy a new towing vehicle, which would be like a pickup, and a pickup, call it roughly $50,000 or slightly more. And so you're talking about spending $70,000 or $80,000 to be able to accommodate the needs we have. And that's not terrible, but it doesn't fit really well in our driveway and has some other limitations with it because, a pickup can sometimes seat 4, but then you have a really small bed, so do you get a 2-seat or a 4-seat pickup? And they don't even make 2-seat pickups now because of CAFE laws and stuff. So we sort of looked at the cargo trailer, but ruled it out just on it wasn't quite the right fit, even though that was one of our alternatives that we sort of chased down and looked at. So next up in our list of alternatives was to, again, look at a trailer, but instead think of like an RV. And so we went and did some quick research. We looked at, like probably Airstream might be one of the highest quality ones, and then they vary from there. So we looked at one of those, and they're quite expensive. It's like $60,000, $70,000, and they make one that's small, so it would be not quite light enough for this to tow, but we need another tow vehicle, but that's the high end. We then looked at some of the really low-cost ones, and we just found that the quality was terrible. They were kind of almost made out of plastic and really rattly and really loose. And we know from looking at like values and stuff like that RVs just depreciate like crazy. So if you don't use it really hard and right when you get it and take full advantage of it, you're going to lose a ton of money. And so we looked at those, and they ranged from, used, they were pretty tired, but because they do kind of fall apart quickly. But a fairly good one was going to be like $30,000 up to some of the small, really light ones that we really liked, which are fiberglass kind of unibody ones. Eclipse is one of them, and I think, I'm trying to remember, Scamp is the other one. So Scamp's made in Minnesota, Eclipse is made up in British Columbia. Really nice trailers, $60,000. And then RVs are really built to be moved around, and so they have all these systems like gray water systems and black water systems, and they almost all have propane, and they almost all have a toilet. And there's all these things that are great, but we're not moving around and going from campsite to campsite to campsite. We're going to be in one place, and we can rig up a toilet or do something alternative there. And we have shore power, so we don't need all those redundant systems and everything. So like, that wasn't the best fit for us. And again, it was pretty high cost, high depreciation, and then also we need another tow vehicle. And so we were still stuck with the notion of spending $50,000 or so on a tow vehicle that would replace what, the limited capacity that the Jeep has. And then we have this RV that is going to depreciate. And if we were using it every single weekend and going, great idea, but we have pretty specific needs and specific use. So we kind of ruled out the RV after doing some research on those. So we need to be able to haul things. We need to be able to stay somewhere when the cabin's torn down. And so then we thought about, well, we could probably get by with the trailer we've got, the Jeep we've got for hauling, and there's some limitations there that we'll have to overcome occasionally. But then need a place to stay. And so if we're not going to get an RV, if we're not going to do a cargo trailer, we considered the Rat Shack, which is one of our structures we have at the cabin. And I'll put a link to the retrofit of that, or the sort of exploration of that. That was literally just a rat-infested shack when we got there. And so we stripped it clean. We got it down to the stud walls. It still smells pretty strongly of rat urine. It's not the most pleasant thing to be in, but it is dry, and it's been dry for a year after we cleared it out. And we said what to ourselves, well, can we sort of do the work to kind of fix that up enough to be able to stay in there for a year while we're doing our other things? And the limitations it is really truly falling apart. Like the metal roofing started blowing off the other day and stuff. So it needs like significant improvements. It's rotted out, and so we'd have to kind of build it, kind of lift it and do some other work. And then we need to build it out to be just, insulated and sort of warm enough and cozy enough that we can camp in there for a year and use it. All of that was going to be quite a bit of effort, and actually, honestly, kind of like a sub-cabin build. And then when we're done with the cabin, there's not much we can do with that, because it's kind of hard to pack off a little mini house like that and get much value for it. You look at like people's tiny houses they're selling and stuff, and they're pretty they can be pretty specific. And it's not a tiny house. It's not big enough to be that like somebody's residence. And then we also worried that you're not really allowed by rule to squat in things like that when you're building. And so we figured we might run afoul with the inspectors when they come. They would let you stay in an RV, but everything else you'd need to be sort of permitted to be sort of a dwelling or something habitable. So the Rat Shack is kind of what we need in terms of the amount of space and everything. And we could, like, if it'd be really fun to trick it out, but it would be like a full build of that, and we're going to turn around and pivot to the right and then build a cabin that's not much more than that. So we thought about the Rat Shack, really kind of explored it. That's why we did the videos on it, but decided that wasn't going to be the best fit for us either. So we started looking at vans, and we have friends. We have a friend that does videography, and he's got a Sprinter, and he's got it tricked out. It's really quite simple, but he's got it set up so that he can bring his gear and do his work. I've got another friend that's got one that they built up kind of for their retirement, and they're going and doing stuff. And I've got an electrician friend that uses one in the trades. And so we started seeing how they were using it and stuff, and that started to fit better with our needs, both for utility and possibly being able to camp in it later. And so we started looking at what kind of van, and there's really three choices you have. You have the Sprinter, the ProMaster by Dodge, and then you have the Ford Transit. If you look online, you can find somebody who says each one of them is the perfect van and each one is the worst van. So there's plenty of information out there that kind of goes up and down about them. So we started looking at our choices. And first of all, the vans are kind of neat because vehicles usually come with packages. And so if you want like the manual and the really stripped version, that's one cost level. And then if you want just one feature, like say you want a skylight, you almost have to buy like the whole feature set to get the skylight. And so the one nice thing about vans is, since they're so often used for trades and for fleets, you can really customize them and get just the things you want and everything if you order it. And if you order it, it can take 6 months or longer to get. And so that was one of the things we started thinking about. We've been thinking about this for some time. And so when we were initially looking, we thought about the Transit, but the Transit, they said, for one thing, they just flat out said, we will not order it for you. And that could be just a circumstance within Ford at that time or within our local dealership network or something. And so then we pushed back on that a little bit, and they said, you know, it's a year and a half or 2 years of wait time, and you'll get the features that we want to give you and stuff. And so I don't know what was going on there, but we tried a few times, and that kind of didn't get any further with that, even though I kind of like their vans. They're all, the Ford, we drove all of them, and the Ford, you sort of sit lower like you're driving in a car, and you've got this big box behind you. And everybody's got different things with aesthetics, and I kind of like the Sprinter the best in terms of the way it looks aesthetically. The Ford is probably, you know, my least like, just because of the way that looks, but that's just a personal thing. The Ford's, everything else about it was pretty good, and it comes with a bunch of different motor classes. The van, nice thing about vans is they all tow somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 pounds. So they tow considerably more than the Jeep, almost twice as much. But then in addition, they have themselves a capacity of something like 4,000 pounds, depending on which class you get of the van. But you can tow quite a bit and haul quite a bit. And it's enclosed obviously in the van, and then the towing can be whatever you pull. So all the vans shared that, and that was kind of nice. But the Ford, we couldn't really order it. We couldn't find what we wanted, and there was limited quantities. So we sort of ruled that one out. So then we were down to ProMaster and the Sprinter. And the ProMasters are, I mean, if you drive in them and crawl around in them, they're a lower quality van. They're a Fiat Ducato. Dodge is actually owned by Stellantis now, which is renamed Fiat. And so they have they've been around, just like all of these have been around in Europe forever, because they don't drive pickups, they drive vans in Europe. And the ProMaster is, the thing that's probably best about it is it's got a really low floor. It's a square box, and it still has the height that you need if you get the high version. And so it's a really easy one to build out. The two drawbacks that we found were, for one, in the back, I don't know why they did this, but on the back axle, there's this really low bar that sits down, and it's kind of the back axle torsion rod thing. And it has like almost no clearance. And so we're not going to go four-wheeling, but even just a double rut road, I would start to worry about that. So it just had a really limited clearance, and there's no way to remedy that easily. You'd have to rebuild the whole rear suspension. So you can put lifts and tires on these things and stuff, but that bar is really low. So that's just like, kind of seemed like a fundamental design flaw. And then we were still committed to doing that. We actually were going to go get one. We liked our Jeep. The ProMaster actually has the same motor as the Jeep, so we knew it was like readily available parts and stuff. But then we went and looked at the ProMaster and kind of decided that we might think about that. And I just happened to be getting the Jeep maintained. And I asked my local dealership, I said, you guys do all the warranty work on the ProMasters, right? And he said, no, actually we don't. It turns out like their bays in our local dealership in our community here aren't high enough. And so then they're not certified to do any of the warranty work on the ProMaster. And so then I said, well, where would I take it? And he said, you know, a location 60 miles away. And that means if we have any problem in those things, at least with our Jeep, we had a few recall things and some other things, or any type of warranty work, we have to potentially trailer it up to the dealership and stuff. And that just seemed kind of like a non-starter, because we want to be able to go to a local dealership. And that's actually one of the criticisms of the Sprinter, is because it's a diesel and it requires specific mechanics, it's tougher to find repairs for those. But across the street from the Dodge, the same day I asked that question, was the Sprinter dealership, and I just happened to be waiting for the Dodge, and so I walked across and asked them. They said, oh yeah, we do it. We are the dealership for doing that in this area. And I looked, and they had a huge row of repairs and other things that you know, so they clearly do a lot of work on the diesels and the Sprinters. So the Dodge got ruled out, not because we didn't like it and not because we wouldn't have done it, but because we couldn't get it repaired locally. And so then we started looking at the Sprinter. And the Sprinter is a little bit more costly. It's definitely a higher quality build. And really the only choice there was whether we were going to do a four-wheel drive or a two-wheel drive version. The two-wheel drive can come with a slightly lower output engine and it gets a little bit better mileage. But for the reasons I said earlier about us needing to be able to travel and potentially go across the neighbor's yard and things like that, we decided to get the four-wheel drive. So that's how we ended up getting the Sprinter. The Sprinter, it took about 6 months to get. We weren't sure when it was going to be delivered, so I've mentioned it in a couple other videos, and there's some parts in the garage that will go in it that are starting to see if you want to look back and try to find those. That'll be part of the future builds that we'll do with this. But it took 6 months to get, and we didn't know exactly when it was going to hatch out of its factory. They're built back east in I think South Carolina. And so we got a note the other day that said it was hatching out of the factory, and so and then it took about 5 days to come across the country, and here it is. And so a couple things about being able to order it is we didn't get much of a discount because they always try to sell the fleet they have on the floor, but we got the most current version, so this is 2025, and we were also able to get every specific thing we needed or wanted, but none of the stuff we didn't want. So like for instance, the swivel seats on these vans, you can spin the seats around, and I'll show you that. You can spin the seats around and then use them for the interior when you're camping or doing other things. And that feature, if you get in most builds, it comes with all the other features like leather seats and motor things and just all kinds of stuff that we didn't want. We wanted a pretty simple van, but with a few key features. So we got LED headlights because we're driving out at the coast where there's a lot of animals and things, and they're really bright and really good and they're adaptive. And so that's a really nice feature. But again, normally that just comes on the really high-end package. We only needed that feature. We got the swivel seats. And then we also got a lot of missing features. So we didn't put a floor in it. We didn't put any sidewalls. It's like a super expensive metal box. And that's what we were looking for because we didn't want to buy all that stuff and then immediately turn around and rip it out. And I looked online and there's people selling the floors out of brand new Sprinters, but they're selling them for at or more than you even get as a feature when you buy a brand new Sprinter. So it's not like you can get an aftermarket or a takeoff part like the Jeep. Sometimes you can get takeoff parts for really inexpensively because people are upgrading. That wasn't really the case here. So it wasn't really worth getting any of those features in there that we were just going to immediately remove. So we've got some work to do to be able to make it even initially usable, but that's what we wanted to do. So I'll give you a quick tour. So it really is just a metal box. There's no interior at all in the back, and then a pretty simple interior in front, but it does have the swivel seats. And that's exactly how we wanted it because we want to be able to measure and pull things in. A couple things that it did come with that I didn't expect is the dealer threw in some big rubber floor mats, which will be really nice, which we would have done right away. And then I didn't realize that it has D-rings built into the floor system even if you don't have the floor in. And so that gives us good anchor points so we can strap things down and tie it in. I'll probably just layer a bunch of cardboard in here to start with, just so we've got something to set things on and do some work and start using it. It's super noisy now because it's just a metal box, and when you're driving in it, it just sort of rattles and you can hear a lot of road noise. So we'll put in a floor first and get that tucked in. We know kind of what we want to do with that, and we've got an idea for additional seating that I'll kind of show you that's going to be kind of fun in an upcoming video. We'll also put in a trailer controller, a brake controller, because these don't come with those, and I'll show you. I've got an idea for that. I'll use the same one that I used in the Jeep. But I'll do a quick tour here and show you what things look like, and then we'll start the build series for the van. So to move these seats, I think you just slide them all the way forward. I haven't actually done this yet. And then there's a catch somewhere that I'll find. Did manage to find a bunch of grease. So we'll sit in here. This kind of works nice. We'll sit in here and figure out how much space we have in front of us. And that's what we really want to do for the first bit is I've got a laser. I'll kind of measure this. I'll build a full CAD model of this, and I'll do a feature video with that, and I'll show you that. And we'll start to kind of get to work with this. But we want to really kind of be in here and do it because there's a ton of videos out there on vans, and there's a lot of stuff people do that seems like they're doing it just because everybody else did it in other videos, and that's fine. There's some good models out there, and I'm sure a lot of that is borne out to be really useful. But we really want to kind of do this from the ground up, thinking what our needs are and how we best fit those. So we'll share that as we do these videos. We won't do a video on every single thing, and it's going to look different than a lot of the van builds that you're used to seeing because we are going to start from scratch and think it through for our own use. So excited to do this. It's going to be kind of fun. It's going to be pretty intermittent because we've got a lot of other things ahead of us, and we're really just going to be using this to get the utility out of it at first. But as we do things, I'll put together little videos for that playlist about the van, and you can watch that and see the build as it goes, and hopefully learn something along the way. You'll see the van in a bunch of the videos just like you did the Jeep. So this is a new member of the family, and we're excited about it, and we'll be sorry to see the Jeep go, but it's been a super useful vehicle, and hopefully somebody else can find a good use for it. So thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, you might subscribe, and if you click the notification button, you can see the videos that we've got for all these projects, including the van. Take care. Until I see you next, we'll be out building.